Kristen, thanks. Minute past the hour. Happening this week, two teens accused of killing bartender Stephen Garrick will face a judge. Two other teens, four older teens, had pled not guilty in court yesterday. 16-year-olds Christopher Rodriguez and Jeremiah King, 15-year-old Andrew Hubler, and 17-year-old Ryan Archibek were in district court yesterday morning. Police say they killed Garrick in his driveway in June while breaking into cars and homes. Police say King pulled the trigger. His bond was lowered from $250,000 to $100,000 cash only. Hubler's and Rodriguez's bonds were lowered, and now they only need $10,000 to get out. Two 14-year-olds will face a judge Friday in juvenile court.
And that case turns us to this developing story this morning. Albuquerque's mayor is now saying he stands with many others in the city wanting a city curfew for teens. But that still does not mean it's going to be easy to get it approved. Albuquerque had a teen curfew back in the 90s, but the Supreme Court ruled state law did not allow it. Now, attempts have been made to change state law, but those have not gotten anywhere. Some city leaders, as well as Albuquerque police, plan on lobbying lawmakers to allow communities to impose their own curfews. Mayor R.J. Berry told us he supports a curfew, but it's still not enough.
We need families to understand that there's not a lot of great things that happen in the wee hours of the morning if your kids are out. So let's all work together.
Governor Susana Martinez also says the state law needs to change. The governor says she believes, quote, local communities should be able to decide for themselves whether to enforce teen curfews with common sense exceptions for things like emergencies. Also happening right now, 21 wildfires are burning in the state of California with more than 9,000 firefighters on the front line. What's even more alarming is some 6,000 homes are now being threatened. The largest one is just north of Sacramento, known as the Rocky Fire, jumped a containment line on Monday as the state declared a state of emergency. The fast-moving fire has tripled in size just over the last few days.
Happening today, National Night Out. It's a day where law enforcement and members of the community come together to help curb crime. This is video from a few years ago. The event's designed to promote community member involvement in crime prevention activities and police community partnerships. In Albuquerque, several neighborhoods in the city will be holding events tonight. Rio Rancho begins its night out at 5 o'clock this evening. There will be all kinds of fun things to do at Cabazon Park. In Los Lunas, communities are invited to Daniel Fernandez Park starting at 6. All events are free to the public. 5:04 in developing this morning, Las Cruces police are now offering a $5,000 reward to find whoever placed bombs at two Las Cruces churches.
Places of worship seem to elicit some sort of response by individuals that evidently have a lot of pain and hurt in their own lives and believe the best way to deal with that is to inflict pain and hurt on others.
The churches are cleaning up meantime the mess that was left behind from Sunday's blasts. Police say two improvised explosive devices went off within 20 minutes of each other at the Calvary Baptist Church on Locust and the Holy Cross Catholic Church. No one was injured. One worker at Holy Cross says had it been 10 minutes later, though, parishioners leaving Mass could have been caught up in that blast.
It could have been kids not understanding how much damage they were going to do. It could have been somebody looking to kill somebody. I don't know, but, it's a terrible thing.
Several agencies, including the FBI and ATF, are investigating. They say they have gotten a few tips here.
This morning, the Confederate flag that was once seen in Old Town is no longer flying. The city took it down yesterday after some community groups cried out saying it should not be there. The groups told city officials Albuquerque needs to follow in the footsteps of South Carolina and take down the Confederate symbols. The city says it will leave up the Civil War era cannons and plaques that accurately represent Albuquerque's place in the history of the Civil War.
If you talk about the fight for freedom for all people in America, we played an important part and we should acknowledge that history. And so we want to continue to do that, but we want to do it in a way that's respectful.
The Confederate flag is now replaced with the city of Albuquerque flag.
5:06, let's take a live look over our nation's capitals. We start this Tuesday where an attempt to cut federal funding for Planned Parenthood failed in the Senate. This comes as a federal judge extended a restraining order that blocks an anti-abortion group from releasing any more recordings that it secretly gathered. Planned Parenthood's been under major scrutiny over the past few weeks after the release of heavily edited videos from an anti-abortion group that claimed that the group is selling fetal tissue. Also happening today, the man accused of killing a Tennessee officer is expected in court.
This after turning himself in Monday after an intense manhunt. Tremaine Wilborn is accused of gunning down Officer Bolton during a traffic stop. Police say the officer may have interrupted a drug deal when he was shot multiple times. Wilborn will have his first appearance in court later today.
Developing now, another tragic escalator-related incident in China. State-run media says a 35-year-old man had part of his leg amputated when it got stuck in a Shanghai mall escalator. Surveillance video shows one of the escalator's floor panels giving way, trapping his leg. This incident comes days after a 30-year-old mother died in central China when she fell through an escalator metal panel. Despite this incident, China says, as it puts it, there were just 49 escalator or elevator-related accidents last year.
Wow. And turning to this developing story right now, more than a dozen people are being hospitalized this morning. The families of a man and a girl are mourning their deaths after a tent collapse. The accident happened during a circus performance yesterday afternoon in Lancaster, New Hampshire. As severe weather ripped through that area, about 100 people were under the tent at that time. Officials will be looking into weather conditions and the tent setup as part of their investigation. So far, officials with the circus have yet to comment on this incident, and our thoughts go out to the families this morning.
There were 19 men surrounding one man alone in the foothills of
these officers, following their training, made the decision to use lethal force to protect an officer from a deadly threat.
In court, two different versions of what happened last year when APD officer Dominic Perez and now retired officer Keith Sandy shot and killed James Boyd in the foothills. And this morning, more witnesses will testify as the preliminary hearing in the James Boyd shooting continues.
And what the judge must decide in the coming days is whether that shooting was murder or it was self-defense. Prosecutors are arguing that police created the danger that day and turned an illegal camping call into a massive armed standoff. Defense attorneys for the two officers say that Boyd was threatening the officers with knives, and they did what they're trained to do.
The facts that you're going to hear are about two officers following their training, seeing that a fellow officer is in jeopardy of being gravely hurt or killed by a crazy man with two knives.
At the end of this case, we will ask the court to bind these officers over on second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, and involuntary manslaughter, and the two other charges that we filed.
The judge could decide to lower those charges or even drop the case altogether. The preliminary hearing will continue throughout the week. Stay with KRQE News 13 on air and online for up-to-the-minute details.
We turn on to other news happening today. A Colorado jury will continue on to the final phase in the Colorado theater shooting. And the death penalty is still on the table. It took jurors only 3 hours to decide that James Holmes' mental illness does not mean he should not face a death sentence for murdering 12 people and injuring dozens of others back in 2013. Today, jurors will hear from victims before deciding if Holmes should die from lethal injection or spend life in prison.
Back in our state, the family of an Albuquerque attorney is suing the Office of the Medical Investigator today. Civil rights attorney Mary Hahn died from carbon monoxide poisoning at her home in 2010. Police ruled it a suicide, but the family claimed murder and said that APD botched the investigation. The lawsuit against the Office of the Medical Investigator claims the department did not conduct a complete investigation of the scene. It's asking for a re-examination of the cause of death and that the death certificate be changed to say that her death was undetermined. 5:34 all week, we are your back-to-school station, covering everything you need to know before sending the kids back to the classroom. And this morning, we're talking money.
Yeah, parents are getting ready to shell out hundreds of dollars in back-to-school shopping. But are you spending your money wisely? News 13's Catherine Mazzone dug up some budgeting tips. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Ask any parent. Every year, it seems like your back-to-school shopping list gets bigger and bigger and more expensive. From pencils, notebooks, to even laptops, there's a lot to spend on. We jotted down 3 ideas to help you stay on budget. According to practicalmoneyskills.com, idea number 1, plan it out on paper. Estimate how much you can afford to spend on each item and how much it actually costs. Your sample budget should look similar to this. It's better to know ahead of time if things will be tight so you can determine what's a necessity and what's not. If you have money left over, then get the extras. Tip number 2, start early if you can. While waiting for tax-free weekend could be a plus, you don't want to feel pressured and impulse buy at one store instead of looking for the best deals. Tip number 3, choose electronics your kid really needs. For example, before you buy that pricey calculator, will your kid ever use all the functions? And can it be used for several more years to save money in the long run? Also, a local finance expert says before you rush out to get the brand name items on your kid's supply list from their school, do this.
One of the questions that you can always ask the school or the teachers, is it necessary to have that brand name? Is there a reason? If not, can you use a substitute?
Experts also advise you to include the kids. It's important they be involved in shopping for their own supplies. And here's something you might not have thought about. Before you even start shopping, check your home for items that can be reused, like plastic folders. Back to you.
All right, Catherine, great advice there. Coming up on Thursday, we're looking into if you can get everything your kid needs by shopping online and if it will save you more money.
We also wanted to know how Albuquerque parents budget for school, and they tell us they usually wait for tax-free weekend to get the majority of their things.
That's when we're going to get the rest of school supplies and a lot of clothes. We've got 5 altogether that we got to get school supplies for, so we got to make sure budget, yes.
And a reminder here, this Friday through Sunday is the big tax-free holiday. Once a year, the state suspends the collection of gross receipts taxes on select supplies and clothing, I should say. And if you'd like a complete list of the items that are tax-free, just go to the KRQE News app. You'll also find great resources for parents, including schedules, news, and events for schools across the metro.
We turn out to this. A new video is raising some questions this morning about how kids should be disciplined in school and when school officials cross the line. In it, you can see a Northern Kentucky student being handcuffed by a sheriff's deputy. The deputy is also a school resource officer. The boy is only 8 years old. Now his parents are suing the sheriff's office. Another family also says the same thing happened to their child. The ACLU is getting involved, saying the school went too far. They claim both kids have ADHD. The school says it does not call on school resource officers to discipline children.
Later today, we could learn who will participate in the first Republican presidential debate later this week. Last night, some of the current candidates appeared on C-SPAN. They took photos. They pitched their ideas to voters. Thursday's debate will have 10 slots, 8 of which appear to be filled already. The last 2 will likely be decided upon based on popularity in the polls. The debate airs Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and it, by the way, is being hosted by the Fox News Network.
Take a look at this new video this morning. Dramatic flooding in northern China. Wow, the authorities say heavy rains caused that road right there to collapse. 3 vehicles parked on the roadside fell into the rivers. You can see right there. One man was seen climbing down the collapsed cliff to get to his car. State media reports it was the heaviest rainstorm in the county in dozens of years. Crews were able to retrieve one of the vehicles. Luckily, there are no reported deaths or major injuries in this.
I'm curious what people think that guy was doing, you know? I mean, he's trying to obviously reach something in the car would be my guess, but boy, put himself in a lot of danger.
It is not worth it. Look how fast the water is just moving below him. One slip and he would be taken away.
That pavement was pretty thin.